You?
Millward.
Oh my
Mill.
You gotta introduce him. Dude, you guys have the same name. That's
Yeah.
way more. I mean, we went on a date, but it's true.
All right. I just go anytime. All right. Welcome to another Deeper Than Dough podcast. I'm your co-host, Wade Rasmussen. We got Bennett Maxwell, the host of the podcast.
The other co-host.
The man. And today we've got an especially well-named man here. His name is Wade Millward. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh my gosh. Professional, personal, all the above.
All the above, man.
Yeah.
Let's dive into this, guys. I was grew up in Southern California. I'm in an Orange County area. So I grew up with like the best timing in Orange County. People are gonna listen to this like this guy is the worst. But I grew up with like the OC TV show, Laguna Beach, the TV show, the movie, the OC, all at the same time. I was like a teenager. I'm like, dude, this is incredible. Everybody loves all eyes on Orange County, right?
Yeah.
So I got to grow up in that scene, which is super fun. Got to go to the beach all the time, which is super fun. Kind of did all that stuff. And I met this girl when I was 12 or 13 years old. Every time I would walk by her, I would get butterflies. I would smell her hair. I wouldn't be creepy about it. Just calm down.
Like Joe Biden smell?
She wasn't quite 9 years old. Guys, she wasn't 9. Okay. She was my age.
Okay.
So it was appropriate. I didn't make a hair doll, so that's good. Anyways, where I was getting at though is I would get butterflies every single time I saw her. And I had this vision of one day dating her or marrying her. And that is my now wife.
No way.
So I was
That's
reading your
awesome.
bio and you put still in love husband.
Yeah.
Why'd you put that?
I think we fall out of love. I
Yeah.
think I wanted to put more stuff in there, but I was like, maybe I gotta back this up a little bit. I think we fall out of love over a period of time, right? I think often that happens, which is so sad. And I often think about marriage and relationships. I'm like, it is. To be honest, I was naive in the beginning of my marriage.
How long have you been married?
14 years.
Okay.
Got
Kids?
married when I was 21. 2 girls, 9 and 5.
That's awesome.
And in the beginning, when I first got married, I had this really hard time. People often, you ask people that are newlywed or in the beginning, like, oh yeah, it's so easy. I'm like, bullshit.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And relationships take effort along with everything else in life. But I learned that it took a long time for me to learn that. And it's like, yeah, you got to put in the effort. 14 years in, you got to put in the effort to make sure the relationship works. Like it's hard. And you're always evolving, you're changing, right? And it's just amazing. So anyway, I married her, guys.
I like that you put that because I agree with you.
Yeah.
You do. I'm a problem solver. I can live whatever life I want to live and solve those little issues. But I can have, and I've had a great marriage without being super involved, I should say. Like, meaning on the outside, we don't fight, we don't argue, but we in love like we were in love. No, we fall out of that. And then, anyways, we were just having this conversation yesterday, with my wife, of just like how much better it's been recently. Not that we felt like it was bad, but it wasn't how it should have been.
You see
Yeah,
the
oh my
problem, we
gosh.
fix your problem. That's what we do. That's why we exist, right? But like women don't often want you to fix. What do you think how did you come to that like conclusion? How did you realize that?
Mushrooms.
I was
No, just
waiting for it.
joking.
I was
This-
waiting for
That was
psilocybin.
actually a huge thing.
This
Yeah,
is
that
the
we
Joe
did.
Rogan podcast.
It
That
is.
is a huge thing that we did.
Wade, I have a quick question for you because your situation with your wife is so rare. 12 years old to 14 years of marriage. That's incredibly rare. Just getting real, do you feel like there were times in your marriage that you fell out of love a little bit or, how do you recognize that? Or even if it's just coming on, how do you recognize that it's coming on when
man.
you do?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. I think I was probably very similar to Bennett. I would argue that most men are very similar to each other, where we're often blinded, and we don't understand or are not aware of what our wife is experiencing and what her feelings are. Because you look back at society and you ask those questions of how are we raised as boys and young men, and what is the expectation out of us? We take it all the way back, and what are we inherently known for? We're known, we are the hunters. We go out and hunt. Women stay home. They gather. They clean things up. And so you're also a protector, and so you have to protect, and you can't show your feelings. And there's a level of expectation there as you're a child growing up. Don't show your feelings. Don't communicate.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we understand it. And so then all of a sudden you get in a relationship, and they have different expectations, and yet we haven't learned how to do that. And it just takes a lot of effort to realize that. So for me, we ended up going to counseling. I was just blind. I was naive, right? I was like, oh yeah, cool. It's the same way. Like, I haven't called you names. We're good. Like, this is
Yeah.
all good. Did I ever fall out of love? I think there was a moment in time where it became very, very challenging. I think even there was a level of resentment to a degree for a period of time, which I think is really hard to admit to. Um, and then I finally got to a point. This is probably, I don't know how many years in, 5 or 6 years. I call it the subscription model. I subscribed to marriage. I'm locked in. There is no longer anything in my mind that allows me to believe or think that there is any separation or possibility to divorce or separation, right? So I call it the subscription model. So whatever it takes, and I'm like, I don't want to be just subscriber and like, I don't want the bronze level subscription plan. I want the freaking platinum.
Not even the gold, huh?
No, you just skip to the freaking platinum,
Yeah.
all the way up. And it's like, well, what do you do to do that? What do you do to actually get that? And I think again, it takes effort. So it's like now in my mind, what does it mean to be a man? Men don't run. Men don't flee at the slightest sign of challenge or complications. They stand up. They communicate. They help. They do the dishes. They do what it takes to have a good, healthy relationship. Like that's to me how you define a man. Like that took me a long time to realize that.
Mhm. That's cool, man. That subscribing to marriage, is, you have like the soulmates exist, this and that, and I was kind of going like, man, I don't know what I think, and I was scared to get married. My mom's been married and divorced 4 times.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, how do I avoid that? And then I served a mission.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if I could get along, and I didn't like my first companions, but by the end, I realized it was a choice.
Yeah.
And I could get along with anybody I chose to get along with. And I'm like, if I can get along with a dude that doesn't speak English and that sure as hell doesn't look attractive to me.
We don't have any benefits either.
I could marry anybody,
yeah,
and make it work because it's a choice.
All too often, I think especially now, we want to claim victim, we want to point and blame others, and you have to constantly ask this question, which I think is so important: is what can I do differently? Stop thinking in your mind that, oh, it's my wife's problem, it's their problem. It's a professional thing too. It's in business. We often want to blame our employer, manager, or leader, whoever it is. But in my circuit, or in this thing, it's like you default to blame. It's incredible. And until you finally point that finger back at yourself and ask that very specific question, well, what can I do differently? Well, what about this? And that little voice in your head is constantly eating away. And it's like, but she didn't do that.
Yeah, but like, well, once you take the control, have you ever heard of extreme ownership? Jocko Willink,
100%.
Freaking changed my life. I read that and I'm like,
that's it.
Wait, what? You're telling me that you can send guys out, they F up the mission, and it's your fault? What?
Yeah.
And I started trying to do that, and I'm like, wow, I have control again.
Actually, that's where I got that from, to be honest, Jocko.
Have you read that?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's a little bit about that. I think it's super important. It's challenging though. I think ego and pride often, again, blind us to taking action.
Yeah.
Let's get into the icebreaker.
Let's go. I thought that was the icebreaker.
No, that's
not because we need an icebreaker anymore, but because I'm curious. What did you want to be when you were little?
Oh my gosh. The first thing I wanted to be, the first thing that comes into my mind was a firefighter. Naturally.
Dude, you have the firefighter build.
Well,
you really I was just going to say, yeah.
I came out looking like this. 5'9", 195, pure muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom was not happy.
Just crawl your way out.
Oh yeah, army crawl out of there. I got the fire hose and everything attached to me. If you know what I'm talking about. And then it was like a mechanic. I quickly realized I did not want to do anything with my hands. That was a mistake. And I'll tell you a story. When I first started my career, I actually served a mission in the Philippines as well for the church, LDS church. For those non-believers out there. I come home and I start working for my dad, and I attempted a semester of college. And I say attempted because I am not a school person. I'm not a big fan of formal education. However, I love learning. I'm a continuous learner. But I get into this, and school was not a thing for me, so I had plan A. I did not have plan B or C or anything else, so I had to make plan A work. And I worked for my dad, and he gave me a list. And anybody that's in sales can probably resonate back in 2007. And you get this list to call. And he's like, all right, son, get after it. And I got a list of thousands of contacts.
Mhm.
And I was expected to just cold call all day, every day to build my book of business. And I'm in like probably 3 weeks in. And at this point, I just want to bang my head against a wall and run away and join the Air Force so somebody can tell me what to do. And I don't know what I did. I leveled with myself and I figured, you know what, I've got to make this work. And it was that grit and grind that I established early on that I believe has helped me tremendously. But those are the few things that I wanted to do growing up, and then it kind of led into this career. And ever since I've been there.
Which is now owning an insurance business.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Could you tell me what the company is called again?
Rycor.
Oh my gosh, he's got it, guys.
Rycor.
He's got it.
Not Rick War.
No.
That's a stupid name.
It's the worst. Rycor, man. Oh, there's so much to it. Like, I don't even want to talk about what it is we do and the problems that we're solving, but it's the why behind Rycor, to be honest. I saw a lot of issues, guys, in just existing employers and business in general. And I'll tell you guys a story. When years ago, I was getting out of my car, I was in the parking lot of my past employer. I was actually working for my dad. And I see this guy, and he gets out of his car, and he's one of my colleagues, and he puts his head down, and he walks into the office. And you could tell he was just miserable, completely depressed. I know, I know, what his compensation package looks like. I know what his promotion path looks like, which is basically nothing. I know what the rest of his career looks like. In that instant, I realized something. And I call it the drone effect. It all came to me, and I figured that the majority of employers abuse these employees. They treat them as drones. They give them a prescription of things to do, and they expect a certain level of outcome. And if they don't do that, they don't put in effort, they don't see value in these people, they just simply discard the drone until they can find, or once they find a new drone, they replace them. And I'm like, man, I looked at this man, and I'm like, this guy has so much potential, but people don't see it in themselves. They often meet somebody else that has somehow realized that they have more potential, which is a big question for me. We could talk about that. Like, how do we get to that point in our lives? And I wanted to, all of a sudden it came crashing down on me. And I'm like, I need to help people realize their full potential. And that I think business can be a vehicle to help people do that. Business is not just about profit and making money, like, at all. And if it is, I think you have the wrong why. I don't think it's going to carry you through the hard times. I think business is so much more. It can be such a purposeful vehicle to drive so many incredible things with people. And that's really what gets me going.
Well, I want to dive into that, dude, because I realized early on I'm a terrible manager because of what you said. How do I do it? How do you teach me as a business owner to be better and see people's value and potential?
Yeah, I think all I can say is I'm constantly evolving. The more I learn, the more, man, I think I become more empathetic and more sympathetic towards people, and just like, you start to see them. Like, you see there's something else. You see beyond what you're seeing today in your physical form, right? Like, there's something there. Something that comes to mind now is how we all define success differently. Bennett has a definition of success, which is radically different than most other people. And yet we want to force our definition of success on other people.
Yeah.
That's it. And so you have to accept, well, I see the fullest potential in you. And when I say full potential, I actually mean infinite potential. And if you think about that phrase for a moment, I literally mean infinite potential. They don't realize that yet. They're not there. You have to help them. And they may never want to be there. Their definition of success is different. I want to spend 80% of my time with my family.
Yeah.
I want to put in 40 hours a week at work. I want to make $30,000 in summer sales. That to me is fantastic.
So that's hard.
That's hard.
Hard to see somebody else. I can't even see my own infinite potential.
Yeah.
And when I do, and I catch a glimpse, I'm like, holy crap, shit, I can freaking make a big difference.
This is an interesting category for me. And so I definitely believe in God. And I think it comes back to that. I look at fear and doubt as the two things that hold us back from being able to realize our truest, fullest, infinite potential. And it's very simple for me because I do believe in God. And I look at there's an adversary and there is God. And the adversary is constantly pushing that voice in your head, in my opinion, is the adversary saying, you can't help those kids. You can't empower 1,000 owners to become entrepreneurs and to live a successful life. You can't do that. Who else is trying to hold us back?
Yeah.
And then you look at the other side, and God's like, you have infinite potential. You can do anything in this life. And in fact, you're actually like me, which I think is really interesting.
So how do I do it now? Just, no, I mean, I really have had these breakthroughs recently that I'm just like, wow, like I can do it. I just need to trust myself. And then I need to keep that emotion in me and remember what I felt on a day-to-day basis. Because then I avoid having more of those high-level conversations that will take me to the next level, and 100% because of fear.
Yeah.
100% because of fear. And usually the fear for me comes back to, I'm going to say something this guy's not going to like. I fear Wade not liking me.
Yeah.
So that's the big fear, because
Yeah.
I'm going to get my self-worth from Wade liking me. So I don't want to piss off Wade.
Yeah.
You know, even if you're standing in my way of achieving what I know I can achieve.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's scary.
Oh man. I mean, that brings me back to working with my dad. It was one of the reasons I left. Is I'll never forget. He sits me down one day, and at the time I was an entrepreneur, meaning I was constantly trying to spin up new things. I'm very creative and very innovative, and I like trying new things that are very relatively unique. And he sat me down one day and brings me in his office, and he goes, Wade, all you need to do to be happy in life is just to sell. Focus on yourself. And that told me everything I needed to know. And I'm like, I don't want to just do that.
Yeah, you're like, no, we are different.
Right. We are fundamentally different. I go, I need, my purpose is to serve others, to help people, like to help them grow. And I think I can make a significant impact like you're talking about. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. It just crashed on me.
Why do you think, why is that your purpose?
Again, I see the value in that people can bring to the table. I see what their worth is. I probably do feel very, very good when I see them succeed. That's really, I think that's the reason, is that I just enjoy it, man. I think that brings joy into my life.
I feel like it's so cyclical. You help someone succeed, and they give you love back.
Yeah.
And then you see them again, and
feel good about
you
it.
love on them, they love on you, and you just have this relationship. You know, I really feel like relationships, and when you help somebody, you help someone succeed. I mean, you get, I think, a big burst of that dopamine, a big burst of happiness right then and there. But
you talked about your definition of success being different than my definition of success. What is your definition of success?
Maybe I'll answer that question indirectly. I think about the purpose of life. That's what it brings me back to. Like, we could talk about monetary success and what that looks like, but to be honest, like, I didn't start Rycore to make a bunch of money. It wasn't about that. That wasn't really what was driving me. It was about fulfillment, to be honest. It was my own purpose to be able to fulfill my truest potential too. And so I think about the purpose of life and like, why are we here? Like, what is the whole point of this whole entire absolutely insane experiment?
Right.
And it's something dawned on me recently, guys. Like, I was going through some issues, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is why life is beautiful, which I thought was so strange because I was actually a challenge. And I thought about that for a little bit longer, and I'm like, we often ask this question, like, why is there so many challenges in life? Why is there so much opposition? Why is there so much hate, or whatever, a sadness? And I'm like, well, without that, you can't realize joy. Like, you don't get to feel it as deeply. So I thought about that more and more, and like, what is success in my life? Like, I want to feel joy. Like, joy is different than happiness. Happiness is a period of time where you're happy, and happy is fleeting. It comes and goes. Joy, I think, is long lasting and sustainable. It's something that's you feel different. It's more intense. I thought a lot about what joy means, and what is joy, and how do we come about getting joy. And I looked to my own life to kind of answer that question. And I looked at my professional career, and 6 years in, I had this mindset of just grit and grind, and I'm just gonna, whatever, make this thing happen no matter what. And something happened. I called a spark of curiosity, where all of a sudden I became more curious and I wanted to learn. I wasn't a believer in continuous education at the time, or continuous learning, which other people are like fall off their chairs, like, idiot, I cannot. I'm like, no, dude, I just didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know there was more. Literally, guys, I did not know there was more out there. Like, that's how fixed my mindset was. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I woke up one day, I'm like, there's got to be more out there, which is so bizarre to think that we have the world's information at our fingertips. And I did not realize that. I also didn't know how to learn yet, guys. So like I went through high school, I got by, I didn't do college, I never learned how to learn. And so I became curious. I reached out to, I finally, I had this guy that I thought was like, dude, this guy's amazing. I'm gonna ask him more and more questions. And I just adopted him as my mentor, right?
Mhm.
Like that's what you do with a mentor. You just take them and you just siphon all their knowledge from them. And he was incredible because he wouldn't give me the answer. He'd say, read this book.
That's what we're
Somebody
talking
else said,
about.
there's no way.
In the last podcast,
I was listening, guys. I was listening.
He was talking about business coaches or
Oh my
mentors,
gosh.
and he's like, you know, they're a bad business coach or life coach if they give you answers.
Oh my
They should
gosh.
only ask questions.
He's
Yeah.
100% right. So this mentor, I saw him in 8 years, and this is a professional thing, but he also tied in his personal and spiritual stuff too. He's the coolest guy ever. And I saw him over 8 years start a company. He had, he pivoted probably 9 different times. I know some people that's a trigger word for people, but he did. He pivoted 9 different times, and he eventually sold his company for $100 million, $150 million. Incredible story. But I just started asking him questions. And you go, read this book, read this book, and all of a sudden I learned how to learn. And I'm getting to the definition of joy. Wait, just chill. And he's all looking at me all
Chomping at
just
the bit.
chomping. And you know what started to happen in my life? I started learning. I started taking more action. The fear and doubt started to go away more and more and more because I started to see the results of the action. It's a cycle. You have to take the first step. So, and I started learning more, started using that knowledge, implementing that knowledge, taking more action, became more confident, I believed in myself. And that's what I realized is joy. It's progress. It's progress throughout life. And if you're continuously progressing throughout life, I believe you will feel joy throughout life. And the moment you stop progressing, you become lackadaisical and you don't want to do anything.
Mhm.
Look at those people. Are they happy? Are they feeling joy? No, they're extremely depressed. They're blaming everybody else. They're pointing the finger. They're the victim. That's my definition of joy.
I seriously wish that every single person in the world could listen to the last 30 seconds of what was just said.
Boom.
That seriously hit me. I got the chills. Dude.
Yeah,
Look
baby.
at that. I
That's why I'm
got
here.
goosebumps. Serious. Joy is progression.
It's progression.
Boom.
Isn't
That should be the title of this episode.
it's
There you
mind
go.
blowing?
Yeah.
Recently, I was out at actually the event where we met over in Philadelphia, and my investor brought his wife over,
Mhm.
and he's been a very successful entrepreneur for the better part of over 2 decades now, and his wife has been along for the ride this entire time. And I just got personal with her real fast. I'm like, hey, how have you dealt with it?
Yeah.
Dealing with an entrepreneur
Yeah.
and successful at bat, like he's out. And she's like, wow, that's a really good question. She goes, I'm like, was it hard for you? Because I was asking for my benefit because I
Right.
was trying to figure it out. And she's like, it was incredibly hard for the first several years of our marriage, 5 to 8 years. She goes, it was really hard. But what helped me was when he started to include me in his events, and he would take me with. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like maybe they don't have the aspirations to build 1,000 stores. That's okay. It's not their definition of success. Their love language, like my wife, is time with me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just physical touch, like just let's go.
Yeah.
You know, like
I heard
love
the
it.
podcast voice
Let's
right there.
go.
Let's go.
go. And so, dude, like that for me, I am far from perfect or even good at this. I need to. Well, now that I think I gotta go, guys. I'm just kidding. But like that to me is it speaks volumes. Is understanding their love language. Like my wife for sure is I want to be paid attention to.
Yeah.
And I want time with you. Let's you imagine you put yourself, be empathetic for a moment, put yourself in their position. Could you, Bennett?
No.
There you go.
I already
Dude,
put myself.
I couldn't.
You can't.
I couldn't.
They trust us to take care of them, to provide. They go through the risk of starting a company and the trials that brings, and maybe even the blowback that it brings, or the expense, the heartache, the change in lifestyle, the whole thing. And somehow they love you so much that they're willing to take this absolutely crazy ride with you. So like I often loop her into my story with like, well, actually I'll tell you this story. When I was an entrepreneur, I had this original idea of Rycor in 2018, and I approached her about it. And I asked her, I go, hey, I'd like to start this company. And she looked me dead in the face. I'll never forget it. She goes, you're not ready. And without the support of my wife, I'm like, well, there goes that.
Yeah.
And while I'm miserable, guys, at my current job, she's not on board. So what can I do differently? Oh crap. And that's when I started this progress of learning, or this learning, continuous learning thing. And within 2 years, the opportunity came up again where it was just such terrible environment at my current job that I'm like, I got to do this. And she goes, "You're ready now." Yeah, I'll never forget that.
What had changed?
That's 2018 was the time I met that mentor guy, and I started learning.
Yeah,
and
That's awesome.
that was the change for. So that's what I like when I tell people, like, that's how you get the most out of life and feel joy. If you're not progressing, take action today. You can do anything. There are. I'm not a college guy. I don't like formal education. That's cool. I'm a huge Audible guy, right?
Yep.
Audible podcasts. I don't care. Magazine articles, freaking books, whatever you want. There is so much YouTube. There's so much information out there. I can guarantee you that every single one of us in this room and listening to this podcast have impressions throughout the day of good things to do for other people. And how often do we simply discard them?
Yeah.
And go about our day? Somebody else will do that. Do it. Do it for your wife. Do it for the people around you. Do it for your loved ones. Do it for people that you don't know. Follow through. The more you give, I genuinely believe this, the more you give, the more you get in return. This is not just to be selfish, but it will come back to you. That's great. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
that means that's a wrap.
Awesome. That's it.
That's awesome.